Now, before you head to the comment section to rant about how wrong I am for saying what I'm about to say, I will have you know that I do not hate this movie by any means. I simply think that Peter Pan is not quite deserving of the reputation that it has amongst many Disney fans. And I will in fact start this video by pointing out the things that I do quite like about the movie first, just to show you that I don't think that everything about this movie is bad. Firstly, and almost obligatorily, I must mention the animation. I mean, it's classic Walt Disney Animation Studios 2D traditional animation. Even my least favorite movies that are traditionally animated by Walt Disney Animation Studios have good animation to one degree or another. And this movie is certainly no exception. There's a lot of really nice intricacies in the movements of the characters, and a lot of extremely expressive stuff, especially with the two best characters in the movie, Captain Hook and Mr. Smee. And of course, I can't not mention Tinkerbell. Since she doesn't actually talk with words, the only way for us to know what she's trying to say and what she's thinking is through her body language and facial expressions, which are all animated immaculately. And so I must give a massive bravo to the 9 old men, the famous Disney animators, who worked on this movie, along with any other animators who joined them in the process. I will note it isn't the best looking Disney animated movie ever, but that's mostly just because of its lack of extra details and shading due to the budgeting and funding around the time of this movie being cut back a little compared to some of the earliest Disney animated movies like Snow White and Pinocchio, or later Disney animated movies when they moved to digital especially, that allowed for these details to be added on much more easily, without massively increasing the budget of the movie. So it's kind of circumstantial what I'm trying to say. The point is, the animation is very good, and it is a visual marvel to watch every time I see the movie. Secondly, I do like that for the most part, this movie is pretty faithful to the book, since I have actually read the Peter Pan book by J.M. Barrie. Well, technically it was originally a play, but the book is pretty much a straight-up adaptation of the play, beat for beat. And overall, my point is just that it's nice to see a fairly popular and well-known adaptation of a story that's fairly true to the source material. There are some aspects that perhaps negatively affect the movie in some ways because of its authenticity, such as Peter Pan kind of being a jerk, but, you know, more on that later. If you watch the behind the scenes on this movie on the DVD or Blu-ray releases, you'll find that there were actually several deleted scenes or possible alternate ideas they threw around that would have actually strayed much further from the book, and I think they were right to keep it closer to what the original book was compared to those other ideas. And the last major point is, of course, as I hinted at before, Captain Hook and Mr. Smee, two all-time classic Disney villains, who are genuinely deserving of all the praise and appreciation they've gotten over the years.
Smee! Roll for the ship! Roll for the ship!
Their designs are simply perfect, and the way they bounce off each other is absolutely hilarious to watch. The scene where they're trying to drown Tiger Lily and Peter Pan is just messing with them the whole time is absolute perfection.
But Captain, those are me orders, Mr. Smee. Aye, aye, sir.
I think a big reason as to why the chemistry between Captain Hook and Mr. Smee works so well is because of the fact that they were animated by two in real life best friends, Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston, who are, by the way, the very same two individuals who wrote the very famous and very good Illusion of a Life Disney animation book, a book I would highly recommend you buy for yourself if you are interested at all in the process of traditional animation and even CGI animation, which uses many of the same principles discussed in this book. Just a little bit of a fun fact I thought I'd mention. However, that is the last major thing that I consistently enjoy about this movie. Now, onto the part of the video where I complain. Everybody's favorite part. Complaint number 1. The main cast are kind of boring and or unlikable. So, yeah, I don't really care much about Wendy, John, and Michael. Their desires to just have fun and stay childlike forever are not really very relatable. Not even to kid me when I watch this movie for the first time. And they don't really have super defined personalities, well, except maybe John, who I guess is supposed to be proper and British. And the way they kind of just get pushed and pulled from point to point without really ever making any particularly significant decisions for themselves that affect the plot makes them pretty unengaging characters. And then there's Peter Pan, who I would say is definitely more interesting than the other three, but unfortunately the trade-off is that he's kind of a bit unlikable.
Well, get on with it, girl.
My name is Wendy. Wendy Moira Angela Dawn.
Wendy's enough.
Oh.
He's kind of just a stuck-up jerk most of the time. I mean, at one point, in a scene that I will mention in a moment, Mr. Smee talks about how he cut off Captain Hook's hand as a joke and that, oh, that doesn't really mean much. It was just a silly joke.
Why, Captain, cutting your hand off was only a childish prank, you might say.
Aye. Since when is cutting off people's hands just a silly joke?
Perhaps we've landed in a world of madmen.
They're human beings, if that's what you mean, indulging their favorite pastime of trying to destroy each other.
Yeah, sure, it's technically faithful to what's in the book/play, but it's not really helping his case for being a hero that you want to root for. I mean, he brings Wendy, Michael, and John into a super dangerous situation and treats it like nothing. Acts carelessly when the mermaids try to drown Wendy.
Please, I'm not dressed. But you must. We insist. No, please. Too good for us, eh?
Gets full of himself when he's praised by the Native American chief, and then acts like a jerk when Wendy wants to go against what he wants.
I'm sure Mother would be glad to have you. That is, if Peter doesn't mind.
Go on. Go back and grow up. But I'm warning you, once you're grown up, you can never come back.
Quite frankly, he kinda deserved to get blown up by Captain Hook's bomb. Basically, the only truly selfless thing he does in this movie is change his mind at the end and take the main characters back to their home. I mean, even when he's saving them just before that, it seems to me more so that he cared about showing off how great he was while fighting Captain Hook, more so than actually wanting to save the other characters who were kidnapped by him. I think my main problem isn't that he does all these things or acts all this way, but that the only time the movie ever acts like he was wrong for doing that was not wanting to let Wendy go back home, and that's mostly just because he kind of felt guilty, not because he truly thought it was the best thing for her. Complaint number 2. The first scene with Captain Hook and Mr. Smee. Yes, as good of characters as these two are, I'm not a huge fan of their first scene. At least most of it anyway. There are a couple parts that I do like. Specifically, Captain Hook just mercilessly shooting the guy that he doesn't like who's singing, which is a great way to show how ruthless he actually is, and that he will not hesitate to get rid of you if he does not like you. And I like how tryhard Mr. Smee is, and how he's just kind of the pathetic one in this group, but he wants to think he's more special than he is, by always being up there in Captain Hook's face, and the bit where he's just copying everything Captain Hook is saying, like he's the one giving the orders. Great stuff. Unfortunately, what holds back this scene for me is the main conversation that Captain Hook and Mr. Smee are having here. I mean, first of all, Captain Hook and his plan to find Peter Pan to kill him once and for all kind of has a bit of a issue for me. And that is, how on earth has he not found Peter Pan's hideout by this point? The island is not even that big. And second of all, when he eventually does figure out where Peter Pan is hiding because of Tinkerbell, it's at a heavily marked spot on the map. Like a key, major location on the map. How did he not search that area? It doesn't make sense to me. And then there's the exposition dumping.
But throwing it to that crocodile, that cursed beast liked the taste of me so well, he's followed me ever since.
Remember how I said that Mr. Smee mentions that Peter Pan cut off Captain Hook's hand? Well, all of this information, along with it being thrown to the crocodile, and the crocodile swallowing a clock so that they always know when it's coming, are just plainly told to us, instead of being shown to us. Or at least, told in a more interesting manner. Like, they say it so casually that it's borderline throwaway dialogue.
He'd have heard you by now, Captain, if he hadn't swallowed that alarm clock. But now when he's about, he warns you, as you might say, with his tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock.
And the bit about the crocodile swallowing the alarm clock particularly annoys me. You wanna know why? Because at the very end of the movie, in a comedic over-the-top bit of animation, Captain Hook runs inside the crocodile, hits the back of him, and then runs all the way back out, holding the alarm clock that he swallowed. Due to the existence of this scene, there is no reason whatsoever to explain to us with words that the reason the crocodile makes that ticking sound is because he swallowed an alarm clock. Because at the end of the movie, they show us that.
Isn't that redundant?
The movie was this close to getting it right, and yet they added in that dialogue anyway for no reason. It just kind of annoys me. Complaint number 3, the elephant in the room. You all knew I was gonna get to this point. The Native American racism. Some of the most blatant in any Disney movie ever made. I mean, do I even have to explain this?
Teach 'em, pale-faced brother, all about Red Man.
Good. This should be most enlightening.
Native Americans do not literally have red skin, and portraying them as such, especially when also using terms like savage, is really not a good look. Especially when most of them are portrayed to be dumb and ugly looking. And quite frankly, the fact that Tiger Lily is intentionally designed to look normal and not ugly looking because she's a pretty young woman is kind of disturbing. And it kind of harkens back to this idea that people will say other groups are lesser than them because of their looks and other superficial reasons, but the pretty young women are always an exception. And it's kind of disgusting. All this stuff with the Native Americans has especially been a bother to me personally, since in my family we often used to take field trips to historic Native American sites in California. And so I grew up knowing a lot about Native American history and culture. And so even as a kid, I felt something was a bit off about these scenes, and that they weren't quite respectful. And the song, you know, that song is a genuine contender for the worst Disney animated song of all time. Its only real competition are the equally racist Workers song from Dumbo and the Siamese Cat song. And maybe also that horrendously awful Olaf song from Frozen 2, what were they thinking? The entire song is just blatantly racist, with misleading information that borderline makes a mockery of Native Americans and their legends. Not to mention implying that their skin tone is not normal and is only the way it is because of stupid reasons. Gee, that's real great, Disney. Glad you decided to add this song in the movie. I mean, I could go on further, but I think I've said enough. And you know, also, another point I probably should mention, although I haven't dedicated a whole category to it, I probably should have. Let's just say it's complaint 3.5, is that most of the songs in this movie are not actually that impressive or good, in my opinion. The Second Star to the Right is a decent opening song, but it's not super catchy or meaningful particularly. You Can Fly, the most famous song from this movie, is kinda just average in my opinion. And I suppose the only reason people really remember it is that it's a song about flying and everybody wants to fly magically or something. Following the Leader is extremely generic and does not sound like a song you would specifically hear coming from a movie like Peter Pan. Like, it just feels like a children's song, you know, that was thrown into a Disney movie. And it makes me feel nothing. In fact, I felt nothing regarding this song my entire life. We've already discussed the worst song in this movie, so that leaves us with Captain Hook's song at the end, which is alright, I guess, for being a short and simple song. I like Mr. Smee's bit where Captain Hook hits him on the head right before he finishes his rhyme. But the most tragic thing of all is there actually was going to be one really good song in this movie that got cut from the movie. The song Never Smile at a Crocodile, which is always included on every soundtrack release of this movie, probably because it's the best one, even though it wasn't even in the movie. So the movie's not going to get any points from me for having one good song if it's not actually going to be in the movie. Anyways, that's my thoughts on the songs of this movie. Complaint number 4. The final battle. Now, don't get me wrong with this complaint, it's certainly a much smaller complaint than the last one, but I do think that the final battle of this movie is a bit of a mixed bag. It's not a super epic or particularly exciting finale. There's a lot of action and some cartoony shenanigans, but the main duel with Captain Hook is just highly anticlimactic for me, since it's a fairly tense duel up to that point, the best part of the finale. And then, right at the end, Peter Pan just grabs a flag and throws it on Captain Hook, and, you know, he loses. That's basically my main complaint right there, that he goes out like a bit of a chump. Maybe he was deserving of that because he was so dishonest and pathetic in a lot of ways, but it doesn't feel very clever to me, and I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking this. It's just a very aggressively average finale overall. Complaint number 5, the theme, or should I say, lack thereof. Yes, this movie technically has a theme, the theme being the desire to stay young forever and experience childlike wonder. Problem is, barely anything that happens in this movie is particularly childlike wonder and imagination and wanting to stay young. I mean, it's an adventure on an island with pirates and poorly portrayed Native Americans. I'm not sure exactly how that has to do with wanting to stay young forever. Maybe it was more relevant in the past when kids really liked that stuff a lot more. But I don't think this movie really takes advantage of that idea or theme to its fullest. Especially when there's a certain sequel to this movie which I happen to think is much better at executing the idea of this theme. And who knows, maybe I will make a video on that movie eventually too. Maybe I'll even cover the entire franchise. Maybe that was my plan this entire time. And quite frankly, this movie, the first Peter Pan movie that is probably the movie in the Peter Pan / Tinkerbell overall franchise that I have the least to say about. But anyway, as I was saying, the theme is just underwhelming. There's no particular message to this movie. It's just purely for fun. And I guess in a sense that appeals to some people, that a movie just being about fun makes sense for the idea of never wanting to grow up, since people always assume that kids just simply want to have fun and they don't care about anything else or deeper meanings. Personally, I wasn't really ever one of those kinds of kids, and I think people don't give kids enough credit sometimes for how much they actually do care about deeper meanings and stuff. But that's a story for another day. I just feel like every time I watch this movie, I leave it thinking, well, that was entertaining, I guess. And then it just kind of slips out of my mind and I don't think about it, because there's nothing meaningful about the movie. No message to take with you as you depart, to really sit on and think about. And it just makes the whole experience feel a bit empty and hollow compared to so many other Disney animated movies, which do have those deeper messages and themes and meanings to them. There's just nothing here for me to sink my teeth into. But I guess if you are one of those people that really loves this movie, then please, in the comments down below, tell me why this movie is so special to you. I genuinely want to know, because I just can't see that spark, the reason to truly love this movie. And I don't want to immediately start crying nostalgia, which is definitely a possible culprit in some cases. But if there is a reason you love this movie that's more than just nostalgia, please tell me. Oh, and one final thing I guess I have to mention is the Lost Boys. But, I mean, the reason I didn't really talk about them in this video at all is because they're just kind of there. They neither make the movie better or worse. They have their fun shenanigans here and there, but they're not really in-depth characters whatsoever. They can mostly get away with just being side characters who exist, since they were never meant to be the main characters in the first place, unlike Wendy, Michael, and John, who I think should be a little bit more in-depth. But these guys, they're there, I guess. There you go, I talked about them. Now you can't tell me in the comment section that I didn't. Oh, and I have several social medias if you want to follow them in the link in the description down below, including also a link to my gaming channel if you want to check that out, and my Patreon, where you can go if you want to support me financially and get a few minor bonuses along the way, including your name up here like these extra iconic individuals. Big shout out to these guys. Oh, and also this group includes channel members. Something else you can sign up for, although it's basically just to get your name up here because I currently don't offer any other benefits, so only do it if you want to support me. And hey, there might be more benefits in the future, but I'm not promising anything yet. I'm a one-man show at the moment. It's hard to do everything.
If you'll forgive me for suggesting this, perhaps you would like to check out my previous video on The Spectacular Spider-Man, where I ranked every episode from worst to best. Like, literally no one in the entire universe watched that video, and it is very depressing to me that that is the case because it was a very difficult video to make. Or perhaps if you are truly not interested in that, you could check out this playlist over here of every Peter Pan / Tinkerbell analysis video I've done so far. What's that? You're watching this video when it first came out and I haven't made any of the other videos in that playlist yet? Well, I guess you'll just have to watch the Spectacular Spider-Man video then. My evil plans are coming to fruition. But most importantly of all, always remember to be iconic.